All righty. Thank you and welcome. Alice, can I have a roll call today?
Yes. Alderman Petracos?
Here.
Alderman Capadona?
Here.
Alderman Galogly?
Here.
Alderman Smith?
Here.
Alderman Tuskin?
Here.
Alderman Vandermeer?
Here.
Alderman Peretta?
Here.
Alderwoman Bartleson?
Here.
8 present.
Okay. Oh, okay, that's a good idea. All right. So what do we got going on tonight? A lot of stuff, actually. A couple things I want to talk about in the mayor's report. H.H. Gregg just signed in the business park, so that's good. It's not a retail spot, but it's the business parks are certainly filling up as quickly as they can build buildings there. So they will be our latest tenant. They'll go in there along with who we got now. We got RJW, we have LG, Axelent, Press Sense Printing, Acosta, Chiquita Banana, and Julian Electric is putting their walls up right now for their corporate headquarters. So a lot of good development going on, continues, and I get a call from either ML or the folks down in Panettone, usually once every other week, saying, I got somebody good, so I can't tell you right now. So it continues to go. It's good stuff. Good news, bad news, as we all know, the Burger King burned down. The good news, of course, is that the fire department did their job, as always, exceptionally. Nobody got hurt, and the fire was contained. I have talked to Tim Flanagan, our retail consultant. I had him reach out to the regional people for Burger King. In this case, it's a gentleman by the name of Adam Cole. He's the director of development for Burger King in the region, and we're going to set up a meeting next week to figure out what our next steps are. Are we rebuilding? Are we going to have a different franchisee owner, perhaps? I think there were some issues there previously, so we'll just try to explore our options. So, JR. I have asked JR to change his liaison here on the council. Instead of being in downtown development, I've asked him to kind of oversee our water projects, his area of expertise, and he's agreed to do that. So we look forward to getting JR connected with Amy and the departments so that he can start digging a little deeper and help us with those reports and giving us a better understanding on what's going on as we move forward, because there's a lot coming up in the water world. Summer Art Series is this weekend. Should be good. A lot of excitement for that. If you saw the 3 new murals that went up in downtown, add a little color, a little fun down there. Thank our sponsors, Homer Tree Service, Burkott Superfoods, and Montebello Estates are the ones who sponsored those artworks up there. Those look good. And it's been getting a lot of good press, which has always been the point of this. It's not just something that's fun to do, but it's something that we can promote regionally. And it's been on You and Me TV. We've had it on WGN. So it's definitely it's something that we can broadcast to Chicagoland. So that's great. It's important for us to get our name out there in a positive way. Also this weekend, opening Saturday is the Illinois State Museum. I think I mentioned this before, but the opening will be this Saturday. So the governor's office and we have come up with a solution to get it back open, and everybody's very excited. And I've seen national stories on that. That has just really had a lot of good play, a lot of good positives come out of that. So could look forward to that opening. Wanted to mention Halloween hours this year. Of course, it's October 31st. The hours we've been doing it for years, we will keep the same, 4 to 7. I asked Ben, does that really matter? What happens if a kid is out at 3:30? It's not like anything bad happens. It's just those are our designated hours, and people should usually expect trick-or-treaters there. So we'll put that on Facebook and websites and wherever else we need to promote it. Last thing I want to talk about in our open comments is Aiden Tucker. Aiden had a vision to do a walk in support of our police department. As we all know, our police have been taking a lot of hits lately, not just verbally, but physically. And the violence has escalated across the country. And some of the things that were, I think, they grow more disturbing all the time. Now officers are under duress, even when it's not something that's happened directly in their city. They've become targets for things that have happened elsewhere. So even communities that have good relations within their community and their cities are at risk, and there's a lot of anxiety to come to work that way. Aiden, has a desire to show support for our local police department, and he shared that vision with his family, who then helped get other people together and made a walk happen from Jewel all the way down to the police station, and it was good. We could see, and one of the reporters, he's here tonight, he asked me if I were surprised at how many people showed up for that. And I told him, no, not really. I said, that's what Lockport does. They care about their community, they care about their officers, and no surprise at all that they came out in force to show their support. But one other thing too, Aiden, that I want to say is not only do I just applaud you for what you did, but I also applaud you for your citizenship. A lot of people think citizens, that just means if you live here and you have a pulse, you're a citizen. And I guess in the truest sense of the word that may be. But citizenship, in another definition, are people that know they have duties and obligations and dedicate themselves to the betterment of their community. A lot of people come to me and say, oh, hey, Mayor, I got a great idea. And they think they've done their job by throwing an idea of something that should be done or something that could be really great for the community. But it's a lot different when they step up as citizens to make it happen, because nothing happens in this city without people. And so I want to congratulate you on your good citizenship. If you can join me at the podium, you and your family, I'd love to give you a certificate of recognition. So here you go, young man. I'll read it for everyone. Person you should know, certificate of recognition. This certificate of recognition is presented to Aiden Tucker on this 21st day of September 2016 by the City of Lockport for organizing the Blue Lives Matter March in Lockport on September 17, 2016. Your dedication, loyalty, and commitment to the Lockport Police Department, as well as the entire community, are honorable, and your passion for this cause is commendable. Thank you for all your hard work. Thank you, sir. Coveted volunteer caps that we have for people who do great work like yourself. So thank you again, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. All right. So moving on, we'll talk about we'll go into liaison reports. We'll start with JR. JR, so what's the situation with water? No, seriously, if you guys, anybody have anything for their liaison reports?
I don't know if everybody has, but Lisa's doing budget reviews, preliminary budget reviews. I just wanted to, Brian got the probably unfortunate circumstance of sitting in when I did it. I felt bad and kind of started to speed up at 4 hours. So 10:30 at night, Lisa and Ben got to go home. But, there's some work to do. I've talked with a couple of you about it, but I think it's really good, and I appreciate the hard work. I mean, I don't know if everybody's gotten to sit down, but it's obvious that it was really well prepared. So in my opinion, now it's kind of teed up for us to make the decisions on what we want to see in there and have the debate. But it's shaping up really well, as we've kind of come to expect from our professional staff.
I'll just echo a little bit about that. There was a lot of discussion, many things there, but some of the biggest things we got coming up is some project work. What we're going to do, spending-wise, but just so people know that we do have a full plate, so we have a lot of decisions to make.
All right. Very good. Anybody else from anything to say? No. Okay. Why don't we move on to our first order of business, CA1. Ben, did you reach out to
I did,
Kate on this?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. Mayor and members of council, the first item on the agenda was CA1. The mayor had some additional questions on this agreement, and I called the petitioner and asked him if it was okay if the mayor's request was to table it and discuss it a little further before we re-present it to you. He seemed fine with that. And so I would just seek your motion to do that, unless there's any other questions.
Okay.
Don't need a motion, we're not voting on it.
Yeah, I just kind of want to table this until I'll get you guys some further information about what I'm thinking on this, so. Okay, very good. Lisa, what do you got?
Thank you, Mayor. The city is required by state statute to conduct an audit of the city's financial statements every year. Sikich LLP has been the city's auditor since 2009. Our contract with Sikich expired at the end of 2015. A request for proposal was sent out to 8 audit firms that specialize in government accounting audits, and 6 firms responded. Although Sikich LLP was not originally the lowest bidder, they requested the opportunity to match the lowest bid. So we were currently paying about $42,000 with them. Their offer for next year's audit is $35,000. So we have some cost savings there, which is wonderful, and the whole reason why we go out for an RFP. So
right.
I'm seeking approval to adopt the resolution 16-072 to allow the city to continue to use Sikich LLP for our audit services at the next council meeting.
All right, any thoughts, questions on this?
This is like the perfect example of competitive bidding, right? We got a better price from, the firm that we felt comfortable with, so it's a absolute win-win. Really good work by Lisa.
All right, we'll put it on consent agenda.
Thank you.
Are you comfortable going 3 years, though?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'd like to do a 3-year audit. It's a lot of work to change auditors from year to year, so, we asked for a 3-year proposal, and
Okay.
that's what they agreed to do.
All right, Chief, what do you got here?
Mayor, council members, about a year and a half ago, the police department looked into building a community room onto the police department, an addition onto the police department. We put a committee together, and the price was over $700,000. We decided not to go with that plan. So the committee kept working, and actually an officer came up with the plan that I'm going to propose today. Many of you have been in our current room. It's used as a roll call room, a training room. It's the room that we use for the Citizens Police Academy. I know many of you have been there. And when you were there, you realize that the police officers walk in and out because that's where their mailboxes are, that's where their computers are. It's sort of distraction. It's hard to do training in the same room. Earlier this year, we moved our weight room out to the outbuilding in the garage, and now the city employees as well as the police officers use this modern weight room that we have out in the outbuilding. Well, that opened up the old weight room, and we actually made that a roll call room now. We had officers come in on their own time, and we actually painted it, remodeled it ourselves. The cost was for the epoxy floor and for the chairs and desks that are in that room. So now we have an active roll call room, and we also have a training room. So the proposal that we're going to propose today is that we turn that the old roll call room, which is the big room, the biggest room we have in the police station, into a multi-purpose room. It'd be a community room, a roll call. It'll be a training room, a community room, emergency planning, emergency event room, as well as a heating and cooling room for inclement weather. And the difference is, I know that City Hall is used for that too, but ours is open 24 hours a day. Our officers are there 24 hours a day, so in any type of an emergency, we could be able to implement the heating cooling room. And the way we were going to do this room was, we were going to knock down the wall that's currently between that room and the sergeant's room. We're going to add 2 entrances from the outside. So there'll be 2 external entrances. We're going to add a men's and women's washroom in the back, as well as a sink and counter in the back. And more importantly, we're going to add a washroom in the lobby of the police station. I really don't know how they got away with not putting it on 19 years ago. The building's 19 years old. So the cost of this project would be $19,800 would be for the architectural through Bucher, Mitchell, and Bice. It would be $180,000 for the actual work. And we have an estimate from our Birdie Construction, and he actually brought plumbers and contractors into the building so we could get a better feel for the entire cost. So the total project would be just over $200,000, but we built in $20,000 for contingencies. And the entire project would be, cool, all right. The entire project would be paid for with federal asset forfeiture funds, and it wouldn't come from the general fund, and it would not come from taxes. We currently have $708,000 in that account right now. With us, we do have Brett Mitchell from Brooker Mitchell and Beist here to answer any questions if I can't answer it, but I'm certainly willing to answer any questions that you have.
All right, sure. Counsel, you got any thoughts, questions?
I think this is a good idea. When, you know, the main thing here is it's being all paid for out of federal seizure funds, which means not a penny's coming from any taxpayer. No fees, no taxes, and so I think it's a good use of this money. It has to be used for allocated for uses like this anyway, so I'm all for it.
Yeah, and the fact that everybody in the city of Lockport, they need a community room, this is open to everybody, which is great.
What we're trying to do is, I think, you know, when I got the job, the mayor said he wanted the police department to be closer to the community. I think that's all of your, the way all of you think as well. And this is a way we can, you know, literally get them to us for a good reason, not a bad reason. Most people come to the police station for a bad reason. This would be a good reason. We could have the community groups, the homeowners associations, condo groups, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Brownies, and all that come to the police station for a good reason.
The comment I would make is I agree with what has been said so far, but I think one of the things that stick out the most is the officer's safety that would incur with this happening. I think that speaks really clear, loud and clear, of what could happen. So.
I'd just like to point out that the federal seizure accounts probably grows $400,000 a year, so even though he's going to spend down a little bit, it'll certainly rebuild itself in short order.
The only thing I'd have to say is it's great we're using those funds. I think we should have a little bit more discussion about security in and out, like you're actually building a community room within the police department, and separation of public versus private. I think has to, in systems and so forth, we got to discuss that.
We're going to have separate entrances for the community room alone. And there's already sidewalks out there. We just have to build shorter sidewalks right to each door. But we're going to have doors that police officers can get into the community room, but the public won't be able to get into the police station. So it will be secure.
Yeah, I spoke to the chief about it. I think it's a great idea to get the community involved with the police department. The funds are coming from the successful program that the police department has with the asset forfeitures. I think it's a great idea. And I spoke to you about safety as well, that it's going to be closed off, it's going to be monitored. But, you know, in today's day and age, that's just something you need to be careful of, and I think you've taken precautions to try and ensure the safety. So I'm okay with it. I think it's a good idea.
All right, sounds good. Something that you need on the agenda for next time, and put it on the consent. Does anybody have an issue with that? All right.
Listed as a consent agenda not to exceed $220,400 for the cost of the project. Okay.
This is going out to bid, right? When you after you design it, it's going out to bid, multiple bids.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Terry. Thanks for your work on that. Next thing, AT1.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this is before you for review of a proposal for the city to acquire a 2-acre parcel of property that was originally intended to be a stormwater detention area in the Abbey Glen subdivision. This is a subdivision that was approved by the City Council in 1992. 2 acres was set aside to serve as a stormwater detention facility, and it has been serving that capacity since then. The developer was to have conveyed title to that detention pond to the city. It appears that that didn't happen. So the property actually remained in title of the developer's land trust. At some point, the developer left the project after it was completed, and there was a small tax bill on it that apparently didn't get paid, and it made the scavenger sale or tax sale list of the county. Amy received some calls from people who were interested in purchasing it through the scavenger sale, and it's clearly a non-buildable lot because the only purpose for the lot is stormwater detention. So we contacted the county, and the county has agreed to remove the parcel from the tax sale list, convey title to the city. There is a $600 fee for doing that, and then a $37 fee for recording the deed, conveying title to the city. We're bringing this before you for approval to move forward with the acquisition. It's basically clearing title so we don't have somebody purchasing this at a tax sale, and then we have to deal with them. Our recommendation is to put this on the agenda for the next meeting and move forward with the acquisition.
All right, thoughts, questions, concerns?
No.
All right, straightforward, Tom. Go put it on a consent agenda, sounds good.
Thank you.
All righty, Amy, is this yours? Division in Gauger?
Yes. Okay, so a couple of years ago, the city, we applied for funding for the Gauger and Division intersection improvements through the STP program and Will County Governmental League. We were awarded the grant, and we were able to get Will County to pay for 50% of the local share for this project, since they have two legs of the intersection and the city has two legs of the intersection. So this will be, instead of an 80-20 split, it'll be an 80-10-10 split, with the city only paying for 10% of the project. The Phase 1 engineering is almost complete, and tonight before the meeting, we held our open house from 6 to 7. And during the meeting, we are having our presentation. Eric Neubauer from Trans-Systems is here to present the project to the City Council, and I'm going to let him come up and take the mic.
Thanks, Amy. The Division and Gauger intersection is located about 2.5 miles east of City Hall and about a half a mile south along the I-355 corridor. As Amy mentioned, Gauger Road is under the jurisdiction of the City of Lockport, and Division Street is under the jurisdiction of Will County. Traffic backups were noted at this intersection, so the city contracted with Trans-Systems to study the traffic and also perform preliminary engineering to come up with a solution. We performed traffic counts at this intersection, as well as coordinated with the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning to obtain 2040 traffic projections, so that we were not only looking at today, but also looking in the future. When we analyzed the traffic, we found that, we determined that a traffic signal is warranted at this intersection. We also determined that left and right turn lanes would also be required in order for this intersection to operate efficiently. So the proposed improvements are to widen and resurface the intersection to provide the additional pavement necessary for these turn lanes. We will also be adding curb and gutter, performing some guardrail modifications based on the new geometry, including a storm sewer, and adding in the traffic signal. All the lanes will remain the same width, so they're all 12 feet now. They're all going to be 12 feet in the proposed design. In terms of schedule, as Amy mentioned, this is kind of acting as our public meeting, so if you could please sign in. There are sign-in sheets as well as comment sheets in the back. We're trying to obtain design approval as well as begin detailed plans, kind of, it's called Phase 2, this year, so that we can let the project as well as begin construction next year. anybody has any questions?
From start to finish, approximately how long will the project last?
Well, we were looking at that, and it's probably going to be about 4 to 5 months. And that's really when you're going to notice the contractor out there, you know, when they put a shovel in the ground to when they're kind of all wrapped up. There's about a month of kind of landscaping, so these are kind of activities that won't really impact the traveling public. There might be a little bit of lane closure here or there, but for the most part, for that month, they'll be able to travel through. There will be some detour routes. When we get into phase 2, we'll look a little bit more detailed at the detour routes, but for right now, we are looking to detour southbound and eastbound.
And will that detour last for the full amount of the project or a small amount of the time?
No, it'll probably last for about 3 months. When they're doing really the heart of the construction, really the resurfacing and widening portion.
Okay.
Any other questions up here?
I know Bob is down that way, so I mean, having a detour and everybody, there's no real good way of getting north from there.
We're gonna have to go all the way around Broken
Faro.
Arrow or go to Cedar.
Do the Faro or Cedar, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we're looking at right now, is probably using Cedar as one of the detours.
Who's responsible for notifying the public? Is it going to be your firm, or is it going to be the city with the electronic sign? Because there's been other times where, like the Madison Street Bridge, no one was notified, and the construction just started, and some of the residents got upset. They didn't know it was going to occur. So I just want to make sure there's advance notice.
Yeah, the lighted message boards will be part of the IDOT contract, and I think those are required by the federal aid contract.
Yep.
To notify the public, so the lighted message board will be installed by the contractor, and there's a set number of days before the project starts, and they have to have the message.
Yeah.
Cedars.
Yeah.
Certain amount of days, a week, 2 weeks, any idea?
It's at least 14 days, so it's at
14
least,
days?
yeah, so it's at least 2 weeks ahead of time.
Okay.
And it'll notify the public of, potential coming detour, as well as improvements at the intersection, so.
Thanks.
I would ask you probably have that conversation also, since we're down one fire station during construction, and most of the area is being covered also from the east, crossing the highway. Should let them know that they may be restricted at some points. I don't know how that timing works out with the new fire station being built.
It's a different fire, yeah.
I know, but they're covering. That fire district is covering. Northwest is, they said at the last meeting, they're helping cover because that fire station's down.
They'll be able to get
Guarantee. That's a good point, Jim.
That would be
Alderman
their
Petracos.
best route, Wes.
Also, the schools. I'm sure the schools will be notified also.
Now, Amy, you had a public meeting for this before this meeting? Okay. Was there any concerns, comments from the public? Nobody showed up. Okay.
We only had one guy show up, and I don't think he was really here for the meeting, talking to the sign.
Okay. Well, that's good. So if there's nothing else,
I live in the area, so I know a lot of residents want that stoplight to help.
It's needed.
So
It's needed now,
It's needed,
yeah.
for sure. It just,
It's
The
definitely,
Everyone's gotta
Cedar
be-
route might be a little bit problematic because Cedar and 159th is a disaster right now and will be for a while, but you need to do it.
all right. Look forward to the project. Thanks.
Thank you.
Want to talk about Milne Creek?
Okay, my second item on the agenda is the Milne Creek Stream Bank project. As you guys are aware, we have Hampton, Lenzini, and Renwick working on a report. They went out and surveyed the entire stream bank within the city limits to put together recommendations for stabilization and to put together a prioritization of the worst areas in areas that should be looked at first. Erica Spolar and Karen Case, I'm sorry, is here from HLR to do a presentation on what they found in their study.
Okay. Right. As Amy said, my name is Erica Spoler, and I'm here with Karen Case, and we both work in the environmental department of Hampton, Lindsay, and Renwick, engineering consulting firm. And we did an evaluation along the entire length of Milne Creek within the city of Lockport limits. The city has received several concerns, especially from the Calvin Grove neighborhood, regarding the loss of private property along this stretch of creek. And I think the biggest concerns with zone erosion control along the creek not only is safety, but also loss of property and structures. And, you know, actually our firms, the last year or two, we've been doing a lot of these stream bank stabilization projects and assessments. And just recently, we have been working with the village of Woodridge along Crabtree Creek. And they have been seeing erosion occurring along this creek for over 20 years. And both the residents and also the village has, you know, they see it occurring, but it hasn't really hit home, like nothing major has really happened along that creek. So they keep saying, like, we're just gonna put it off, like, let's revisit this in a couple of years. You know, they've done a couple assessments, but they really haven't proceeded. Well, 2 months ago when we had that big rain event, what had happened along probably like 150-foot stretch of that creek is it just finally sloughed off. It had, you know, undermined for like years and years, and it finally just sloughed off and beyond chain link fence, very close to someone's garage, like, and they lost a big chunk of their backyard. And what had happened like the week after is a toddler actually fell, like slipped through that chain link fence, and thank God, like, she wasn't hurt. But I think it finally got people to realize this is a serious condition. We really need to address it. And it had been, you know, they had waited so long that at this point, you know, then you're almost in jeopardy of structures and other, you know, property damage. Not to mention the safety issues that are a concern. So, you know, with that, I think, you know, what we wanted to do is like look at the entire stretch of Milne Creek. So basically the limits are from just west of Lago Vista Boulevard to just west of Archer Avenue. That's the length of the creek that was assessed. It's approximately 1.8 miles long. It is a tributary to the I&M Canal. And Karen actually did the assessment, and she's gonna talk about some specific areas. But like Amy said, what we wanted to do is we wanted to prioritize different areas and kind of categorize them, not only to know where the high priority areas were, but also if the city wished to phase the project, we would know which areas to really focus on first. So we rated them as low priority, medium priority, and high priority. So the low priority areas would include areas that do show some evidence of erosion, but shallow slopes and are at least partially stabilized. So you're seeing some erosion, but nothing to any great extent. And usually the areas that would be designated as low priority could probably be remedied by planting some native vegetation, you know, more so softer techniques that, you know, are pretty economical, but would help, you know, hold the soil in place and not basically prevent any future erosion from occurring. Our high priority areas on the, you know, opposite side of the spectrum would be covering large areas of erosion, would include areas where structures or utilities are at risk, you know, of being impacted by the erosion that's occurring along these areas of the creek. And then the medium priority areas would be, you know, something in between where, you know, it's falling in between the low and high priority areas where, you know, some trees might be undermined, where you're definitely seeing it undercut, but that not necessarily structures or utilities are really in danger of, you know, being impacted by that. So I'm going to have Karen talk about specific areas that we evaluated to kind of summarize what our findings were.
All right, so our first section was from the very south end, which is near Lago Vista Boulevard, up to Division Street. The section in the wooded area, you guys can see. Okay, great. Can you guys see my mouse when I move that around?
Yes.
Okay, great, perfect. So this section is all wooded. There's very little erosion. There's mature trees. There's a high potential for restoration to a native state, but there aren't any structures in the area other than the bike path that we would have to kind of look at. This section up here, the high priority area, there's erosion right up next to the homeowners' yards, and their yards are being actively eroded. There's some areas where you could see people were trying to put retaining walls in, where it's kind of falling in, stuff like that. On the yellow part on the other side, there's steep banks, but there's no structures on that side, which is why we said that was medium priority. You can see from the photos, both these photos, we have some really bad erosion in this section from Division Street to Summit Drive. The whole area behind these houses on Runyon is a lot of those areas are very eroded, where people's fences are about to fall in. You can kind of see on this photo where I'm putting the mouse, that's actually daylight under this person's fence, and I think that's this house right here with the pool, where that is, it's eroding underneath their fence that they installed. The next section here is from Summit to Adams, and this map, we kind of had to rotate it so it would fit on there, but this is Division Street right there. We have significant erosion for most of the stretch of this site. This photo right here is Division Street. We've contacted Will County about potentially getting that repaired. They weren't aware of any issues, but you can see the guardrail it's starting to get quite eroded. And then these other areas, you can see there were some previous restoration activities that took place in this little stretch in the middle here with some Ajax, and I think that was done in, what was that, like 2006, I think? 2004? Before that? Way before that. Okay. I don't have that in my notes, but yeah, so there's some Ajax, and that, it helped a little bit, but that would need some repair as well. You can see this photo with the White House in the back, that's right here on the corner. And it's a very steeply eroded slope, 6-7 feet, but the house isn't super close, but you can tell the erosion is very active, and it's falling in on like an almost daily basis. So this next section from Adams to East 9th Street has some wooded areas. There's a lot of room to work in this area, so it would be a really good section to start, easy access for any equipment. Especially this yellow section on the end, it's perfect for getting in there and moving some of this soil around. But you can see this is a really good representative photo where you have mature trees and just very steep banks. So there aren't many houses that come up too close to the creek in this section. And this house in the cul-de-sac, it's pretty like shallow slopes right there, so they're not in too much danger. This section is really exciting. You can see from the photo, that's me, and I'm like, 5'2" on a good day, so that's like a 15-foot drop off. But it is very, it seems like it's a very dangerous area behind all these businesses. The slopes it's like almost straight down in several areas. There's an exposed pipe, like a big iron pipe. I don't know if it's an active gas line, but that's right in the middle of the creek. The yellow part on the other side is a nice shallow area where we would have access potentially, and it's not as steep. And then this last green section, there's actually cobbles that are set in concrete. You can see that from from Madison. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with that area. So this is kind of a tricky spot because some of these sections do have retaining walls. Some of them don't. This part right here, the yellow, it's pretty steeply eroded, but there aren't any structures in that area. Then we have a retaining wall area. This section right here, we're looking at repairing with the roadway reconstruction contract that Amy's working on. And then we have some retaining walls. These green are all retaining walls. And then we have some extreme erosion areas down on the far west end of the project. You can see this is like an old retaining wall where it's very steep. I actually saw somebody working on a makeshift retaining wall while I was out there. That's a very, very dangerous area. And so when we look at these things, as far as, the problems and the solutions, the problem is right here, or a big part of the problem is, where's my mouse? Right here, you can see this little fuzz on the corner. This is turf grass. So turf grass has like a 2-inch root system, so it doesn't hold any of the soil in place. One of the big things that we try and do with these stream bank restorations is to put in native plants. So you can see that these native plants have very deep root systems that hold the soil in place and don't let it wash away. They're also adapted to fluctuating levels of water. Like turf grass will die within 7 days of being inundated, like if you have a creek flooding event, where these plants, some of them can be under 3 feet of water for 3 months and they'll be fine. So most of our methods for restoration are going to include some kind of native component, which is good for the ecosystem, for stormwater quality, all sorts of things. So some of the things that we're going to be looking at with future design are the queer log here on the left. That's probably the most mild installation that we would do, where that's the log is actually just like coconut fiber in a roll, and that prevents any stream bank scour and allows the plants to establish behind it. Stream barbs are really great for slowing water down, preventing scour on the outside corners of stuff. Rock riffles prevent like the creek from widening, and they also slow it down. Gabion baskets, this is a picture from Streamwood, the village of Streamwood, and Gabion baskets are more of a hard armor thing, like you would need that, if you think back to the Division Street picture, that or possibly sheet piling, depending on, the structural loads in that area. You guys have any questions for me? That's
No
my
question,
section.
but I've been waiting for this to come out. So as you can tell, I've been looking at the maps, and Amy will tell you, and we'll get calls, especially in our ward, in the 4th Ward from Strawberry Hill and
Yeah.
other parts of the city. I'm sure the other council members will get the similar calls. And I'll go and look at the creek, and they'll show me. It's like, well, common sense tells me it doesn't look good, but I'm not an expert. But common sense, you just look at it as like it needs immediate repair. So I'm very excited about this. Amy, when we talked about this a few months back, you were thinking of reaching out to the Park District, because I don't know if it's an urban legend or if there's some kind of an agreement as far as maintaining these creeks going forward. Do we have an agreement with the Park District?
We do not have an agreement with the Park District, and actually that section of the creek that is right behind Strawberry, all the way down to Lago Vista Boulevard, that whole area is actually in Park District property. We did meet with the Park District, and we informed them of the results of the study, and we talked to them about potentially partnering with the city. One of the reasons why we did the study to begin with was because there is funding available through the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, it's IEPA. The IEPA has funding available for projects like these through the Section 319 grant. in order to apply for the grant, it's best to have a study like this to fall back on. And actually, it's even better to have, like some recommended solutions and some, detailed cost estimates for the projects that you're going to apply for. And that's going to be our next step. In the next city council meeting, I will be coming with another proposal from HLR for a more in-depth design, taking these areas that are high priority and putting the, projects together with, suggestions of remediation for these areas and detailed cost estimates that we can pull from and use for our Section 319 grant application. So we met with the Park District and Will County.
Okay.
And we, because the section that is along Division Street in that north right-of-way there, that is, I believe, all in Will County. Either half of it from the center line of the creek down, or the entire thing may be all in Will County's right-of-way. And that's another thing that they will be doing in this Phase 2 part that I will be bringing to you is they will be doing a complete survey of the entire, like a topographic survey of the entire creek bed and putting property lines and stuff in there. So we'll know when that's done exactly which parts are in the city's property and the city's right-of-way, which parts are in the Will County right-of-way, which parts are in the part on a Park District property. And so we talked to Will County and we talked to the Park District both about potential partnering with the city on a grant application for either a large project or a couple of smaller projects through the Section 319 grant process.
Based on the information you know now, and I might be asking this too soon, when do you think some of these projects could get started and how long will it take to address the whole creek system?
Well, the Section 319 grant applications are due in August of every year. So the goal is to have at least either one large project or at least one smaller project ready to go so that we can apply for a grant next August. My guess is that we wouldn't know if the project was awarded to us until after the first of the year. So that would be early 2018. And then we would have to go through the design process and the approval process through IEPA. I would think that 2019, starting a project at the very earliest.
Okay.
So.
All right.
But
Well,
these
thank you.
projects can get quite expensive, and if we can get funding for them, then, we need to think about that. And I think we actually have money budgeted 2018 for, yeah.
Amy, are there any parts of this that you feel need to be addressed immediately? That Division Street looked really bad, and I know that there's, people's fences. I mean, are there some things, this is good, and I'm glad we're pursuing the grant money and making that happen, but it looks like there are some things that may not be able to wait that long. Are there any recommendations of stuff that need to be addressed immediately?
There are some that I feel need to be addressed immediately. Fortunately, the parts that I think are in the most dire need of would be the areas adjacent to Division Street, which are really Will County's issue. That's something that we have brought to their attention, and they know about it now, and we're willing to partner with them on a long-term solution, but for the time being, it's kind of up to them to go out there and make sure that those areas are stabilized and that the guardrail is secured.
All right, well, maybe that's something Ben and I can reach out and just kind of emphasize the immediacy of it. Anything else out there that you think is something we need to address sooner than later?
I think the other major part is that piece behind the businesses along Illinois 7, like behind the church there across from Garfield Street, in those areas. I'm not 100% sure. We haven't got the survey done right now, so I'm not 100% sure right now if that is even our property or if that is private property that belongs to the school and the businesses. And that may be something that we would have to go to the school and the businesses and try to get them to cooperate with the city on some kind of project to get something done there in those locations. I'm sure we probably have some kind of easement back there, but, you know, doing something major in that area isn't going to be easy if it's on private property and we have to have an Army Corps permit and, you know, like all kinds of other things that have to be done before that can get done. So it's not like we can just go out there tomorrow and fix it.
Sure.
And we do have, this last slide was just the next steps, and Amy kind of touched on, you know, some of those next steps. But like the biggest thing right now is to get the survey done and get the delineation done. And the survey's gonna, like Amy said, you know, definitely define who owns what and like what we're dealing with in terms of the elevations out there and the topography, so that we can go ahead and then, you know, do some preliminary engineering design. But we have to do the wetland delineation because we will need to secure permits from the Army Corps of Engineers. So that's just, you know, one step in the process before we would need to get permits. So, you know, I think having that survey in place and doing some of the preliminary studies then will help us, you know, formulate the solution for each of these individual areas. And then, like Amy said, coordinating with Will County, DOT, and then the park districts to partner in areas that, you know, we don't necessarily own the land, but other entities are owning the land. And then working on, you know, the Section 319 grant itself to then go ahead and be able to start construction in 2018.
Okay.
I have a question. I actually remember the days when you could jump across that creek and it wasn't more than a foot and a half deep and 6 inches wide. So my question, and from when I was a kid, which was about 4 years ago, the picture of you behind Milne Grove, I used to jump across that. Brian and I mean, I remember, and now it's what, about 10, 12, 15 feet deep, and it wasn't 3 feet below grade back in 1970. So the question is what's it going to be restored to, or what can it be restored to? Because my whole thought process is, let's just put a big old culvert in there. Let's get the concrete tubes in there, and then put grass over the top of it, and just be done with it. Because if we don't, then it may not look as pretty as with all the native grasses and stuff. But it's what I guarantee you, whatever we come up with is not going to be as practical as put in a culvert, put in 6, 7, 8 feet of topsoil over the top of it, and then fix it as it because this has been. I was telling them earlier about a pic of somebody that they live at 909 Adams in the Semos, and Mrs. Semo showed me a picture about a year ago of her husband. It was an article in the Joliet Herald, probably 1970, 71, and he's standing there, and the article was about the erosion of the creek at 909 Adams, which happens to be where it crosses Adams Street right there, or the extension of 11th Street. And to know what it used to look like, to know what it looks like now, it's just astounding. So I'm going to be really hard to be convinced that native grasses are going to be the answer. Maybe from an architectural point of view, it may not be the most pretty thing, but I guarantee you,
Nature, go outside.
well, it isn't. It used to be nature. Now it isn't.
Well, just so you know, Millen Creek takes a vast majority of the stormwater runoff from the city of Lockport. I mean, a lot of stormwater comes through there. So to put a culvert in there and cover it up, it would have to be a really huge culvert.
Well, exactly.
I'm not sure that there would be one big enough that we
Well, I don't know if it's 15
Yes.
feet or more deep from where it was when I was a kid.
Yeah,
You know,
it
that's-
would
you
be
please
a
put a
huge
10-foot
culvert,
one
and
in
I'm
there.
pretty sure the Army Corps would never permit that.
Well, I just foresee if we do.
What do you, let me ask you this. I mean, you guys are experts. I'm sure you'll have the proper solutions, and you'll see what works in other places. My more concern, though, is, while it's good, I think we're pursuing the right direction, is the immediate needs. Like, I think on Division Street, it's going to take some, probably physical structures there, with cement and other things. But in some of these other areas where it's probably not appropriate to put that in there, as I think even maybe Jim is alluding to, I think people probably do like the natural creek in the backyard. Are there things that can be done short-term to get us through to a 2018 time frame when we actually do it permanently?
The rate of erosion in most of these areas is not gonna, it will change slightly in between now and then, but, it probably won't change drastically. Just a few areas, like the house, the fence that I showed you guys that you can see underneath it. That would be an area. Another thing would be to look at all of the exposed pipes that are there at some of the utility areas. We could do some temporary, like put in some coir logs or something like that in the meantime. That would be pretty, inexpensive.
I think the challenge is that in a lot of these areas that, we have this high priority, it's going to take more than just coir
Right.
rolls or, native vegetation. It's going to take, either gabion baskets, or it's going to take retaining wall, or it's going to take, like you said, concrete. You're not going to be able to do any of that,
Right.
until you get Army Corps permit. So that, you know what I mean, unless there's like an immediate safety concern. So, some of those steps are going to need to be taken prior. I know what you're getting at as far as is there anything we can do now to just kind of stop it until we're ready maybe to do the permanent fix? And I think we may be able to do some stuff, but like Karen said,
To
in
slow
a
it.
year or two, chances are you're not going to see that like drastic of a change in just a year or two before we get to a permanent solution. And we're still going to need to get those permits in place, and have that delineation done in order to be able to get that. So there's just some things we're going to need to do first.
Okay.
Would pictures, 40, 50-year-old pictures, I know probably 80% of the people live along that creek, from Division down to 9th Street. Would that help with making the case for a grant? And if so, then you'd have to Amy can give you my contact information, and I'd be happy to go with you to the people's houses to see if they have any pictures.
Maybe a couple, that would be fun.
I think it would be helpful to
Yeah.
see if we could
Yeah.
determine where the bank used to
rate.
be. And where it, like, how much has it cut back? Because I know a lot of times the Army Corps will say, do you have any historical, do you have any proof, like, where was the bank? Because they will let you then sometimes build up the bank without, additional permits or additional mitigation if you can prove, like, where that used to be, like, historically. So if the village had any, specific plans, pictures, like anything that we can determine, like where that bank used to be, like where the creek was.
We have to, because this has been studied for 40 years. This is one of those, you do a study and put it up on the shelf thing. And that's what's been done for decade after decade after decade. So I don't know if we have any of those records, but by golly, the studies have already been done and the pictures have already been taken. So, hopefully they're not moldy somewhere.
Any pictures of you jumping the creek? We can show that.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in that creek when I was in.
Before and after.
He never cleared
Tadpole,
Yeah, right. Jumping now. Jump the shark. I would echo what the mayor saying, if there's any emergency ones, like, I don't know what that pipe is, Amy, I don't know what would that be underneath there. If that's gas and something goes downstream in a storm event, that's an issue. But I think that what the mayor may be alluding to is, right, we want to do that bank stabilization. We know that to do it right, it has to be graded right, seeded right, done correctly. But it's native plantings, it's seeding. So can we seed? That seed's pretty cheap to get out there and seed those banks and let them relax for a little bit for a year or so. Maybe they take, and whatever doesn't take, it's not a big investment while we're doing this whole process.
Well, Well, I mean, yeah, we can do that, but like Erica said, some of the areas that are in the most dire need of something,
Oh, right. Yeah,
that's not gonna help.
You're not gonna seed that sheer wall.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
get that, right? Division Street some has to be looked at, Will County has to be talked to. But some of these other neighbors, their backyards, if we give a couple bags of seeds and somebody goes out there and we do that, hire a contractor, and we can help some of the ones that are in the yellow to get back into the green a little bit.
This little section, that would be possible. Like you don't need a permit for the coir logs. So this little section of yellow right here, you could do something without any permits, but you run the risk of trampling it if you have to bring equipment in. That's kind of a little bit of a bottleneck right there. So if we did make it look nice, and then in 2 years it might get bulldozed.
You guys can discuss, if there's something cheap, I think council will be open to, if it's something real cheap that we can do real quick, that's great. But
If you're done.
that's it.
I just would like to say thank you for the presentation. Feel this was long overdue for us to start doing something, but we're doing it now, so I appreciate that and moving forward. I guess we talked about some of the things that were prioritized, what we need to, and as you said before, Amy, that this does take a huge amount of water, and it flows out into the I&M Canal. So the sooner that water gets there, the better it is. Again, I just remember some areas are just so bad that it's like, wow, you just can't really take it in. But I guess my question leads to what do I think and what maybe a head start, and I'm asking you if you feel the same. But there are a lot of areas that are just so covered with trees you can't even see the creek, okay? And to me, my issue with that is, how do we know what's in there? Do we know there's logs and trees are falling in there blocking the creek? So that would inhibit the water flow for that, which is very important. So again, my concern is there's the creek there we can't see. Do we start clearing out some of those trees so we can at least see what we got? And make some visuals as we go down or do inspections. I think there's areas we can't probably make good visuals when it does have a heavy rain. We want to make sure those areas are clear. One of those is the outfall, I know from like Reed Street and stuff like that come down into the creek. There's an area there. You cannot see that outfall from where the street is. I know we used to, maybe in the fall and winter we can, but I know in the spring, you can't see that outfall into that creek. I think some of those areas are really important. Getting back to the bank stabilization, I guess the planting is good. I just wondered, is there some maintenance program that we got to keep up on this, and visuals and reseeding? I just think there's a lot of work to do, and I appreciate the head start and what we're going for. I do want to say also that, joining the more parties, getting involved with the grants, applying for that, I think it's a really big bonus for us. And I know, Amy, you're real good at the grants, so, yeah.
One more thing. Do we have any, the plans for when First Acres was built? So First Acres, that'd be 70, 71, because at Reed Street, there's, the original creek used to go through the middle of First Acres, and actually those woods up across the street from the police station, there used to be a dam up there. And so we also have to, it isn't just coming from the Lago Vista area, there's also water that's being diverted. I don't know if there's a, there's got to be, I bet there's a big concrete pipe that's been covered over with dirt that's emptying into the creek right at Reed Street, and that's going through First Acres. And so if those, I don't know, the studies or the PUD, whatever I'm trying to say here, if those have to exist somewhere, maybe not, but somewhere, it'd be nice to go ahead and look at the topographicals of what that land looked like prior to the first house, prior to all the earth being moved, because they just altered the topography, and to make First Acres, it didn't even remotely look like it is.
Something for everyone to understand, that the more development you have, the more impervious area you have, right? It's more asphalt, more shingles, more rooftops, more concrete. that water has to go somewhere, starts going down all our storm sewers and everything, and it's just a free flow. And once it gets to that natural creek, it starts, you start adding it up. So every year that we've been adding more concrete and people have been building more things, it just creates a more havoc to that natural creek. So your answer is correct. Our big concrete culvert would probably fix it, wouldn't be as big enough, and it wouldn't be natural, and they wouldn't allow it. So it's just something to keep in mind, that the more we build out, the more our creeks are going to take a hit. You got to help them out.
Yeah, but as far as First Acres goes, I know that we have plats for that subdivision. I'm not sure that we have engineering plans for that subdivision. I could take a look and see what I can find, but I don't recall ever seeing.
I would hate to have them, because without that, they might be doing 2/3 of the information, but we don't even know where that water's coming from. So then the next question would be and the answer probably is probably not, is to divert some of that water, I don't know how, somehow, some way, over to the creek that goes through Delwood Park. Like I said, I don't know how.
You're gonna get up to the bucket every day?
Let them start the start. Okay.
I'll take a
This is
look,
what we'll do.
see what I can find.
Let me bring it to a close. We're going to Ben and I will reach out to the county about Division Street. If you guys feel that if there's any immediate things, please get back to us. Otherwise, just let's keep pursuing, their grants and keep it rolling.
Yeah, so just so you know, we will be bringing their proposal for the Phase 2 part of the engineering to City Council next time.
All right, very good. Thank you, ladies.
I thought you meant drinking water liaison.
Yes,
I didn't think it was the
get
whole
down.
creek.
Yeah, there at the bucket, yeah.
That does fall under your...
There's water, friend.
Yeah.
H2O.
All right, is Joe here today?
Sewer is water also.
Or are you going to take this, Ben?
He's not. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. If I can take Public Works item number 1. Someone sent me an email the other day that Halloween was 35 days away, and Thanksgiving was 65 days away, and Christmas was 95 days away. And when you think of Christmas, you think of winter. When you think of winter, you think of snow. When you think of snow, you've got to talk about salt. So we've got MFT salt.
Sounds like a Darren line.
Getting there.
Sounds like
Talking to
music
Darren
man.
now way too much.
Never used salt back then.
So we've got another contract for a seasonal salt purchase. We used about 80% of our salt take last year. We do have 2 current full salt domes right now. We're ready for winter. But we have to secure our salt allotment for this winter. And we are going to request the same amount, which is 3,000 tons. Those are $55.38 per ton. So our estimate for the salt material needed for this winter would be $222,000. We are going to be ensuring that we have to take 80% of that. This is kind of a deal we have with the Department of Central Management Services and the salt allocations, that we have to guarantee that we'll take at least 80%. And we can get up to 120% if required at the same price. So it's a pretty standard contract we do each year. There's a resolution that would be required with it. We're seeking a motion to approve the resolution and put everything on consent, if that's okay.
Yeah, sounds like a good plan. You guys have anything?
Sounds
Thoughts,
good.
questions? All right, we could put that on consent. Alice, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anything for new business?
Just a quick shout out to Chief Fleming. He was on the radio, WJOL, this morning at 8:25 and did an excellent job talking about police matters here locally and across the nation. So good job.
Good interview.
Good job, Terry. The only other idea I had that I just wanted to share under new business was we sent out an email. I'm not sure if you all got it today. Amy did a nice report in regards to some change orders and things that are occurring in construction. We felt we would start doing that every Friday before the council meeting, so that when the packets go out, that you'll get at least an update as to what's occurring each and every other week. And then have to bring those change orders for formal approvals. We'll get those to committee of the whole, and then we'll go to city council.
Okay.
Just a reminder, St. Joe's Parish and School is having their annual Oktoberfest starting next weekend, September 30th, October 1st and 2nd. Please stop out.
All right, it's always a good event. Right, Limestone Theater has a thing, I think Thursday, Friday, Saturday? Yeah, so a lot of activities going on downtown this weekend, so that's one of them. Very good. Okay. As we move into the open floor comments, we have a number of cards here tonight. Because of the number, we will certainly stick to our 5-minute time limit that speakers have. I've asked Alice to keep track of time so that we don't go over. This is, most of these, if not all, are about the RV ordinance. I'll just give you a quick piece of background for those who are new to this discussion. This came up a while ago, RV ordinance. There was some selective enforcement that came up that called into question about whether or not we should be enforcing this across the board or just when people are upset or feel that there's an issue. I'm sorry, did somebody say something? Okay. So that's how this first came about. We decided, because we have a lot of ordinances on the books that we've been trying to actually be proactive on, anything from just upkeep and maintenance to all sorts of ordinances, we decided it's time for us to enforce them and not just have them languish on the books. That, of course, is always going to cause consternation among those who have RVs and boats and such. This is not a new ordinance. This is not anything that we've changed or tightened up. This is an ordinance that's been on the books since 1998. We simply wanted to make sure it was being enforced across the board and not selectively. Last time we had this meeting publicly, there was some concern that staff and council didn't have all the information about RVs and how they're built and the sizes and such, so they asked to have a meeting with a citizens group. Ben and I met. We had asked at that time for what they thought the proper size was. There was no consensus in that meeting. 2 weeks later, a letter was given to us by Mr. Justice that had a recommendation. Council had talked about this letter, and during the open comments meeting like we're doing now, there was no compelling evidence or argument we felt that should change the ordinance simply because people were out of compliance. So we decided to let it stay as is. We were originally going to start enforcing compliance in September, but knowing that this is kind of new for a lot of people, we extended that deadline to November 1st, and that's as it stands now. So I know some people want to come up and talk about this a little bit. First person I have for a card is Mr. Rona.
Don Rona, W-R-O-N-A. I live at 317 East 3rd Street. Just give you a little bit of my background. I was hired as a police officer in 1988, retired in 2014. During that time frame, I enforced state, local, and city ordinances. Never during that time frame did I, nor was I informed, to enforce the parking ordinance restricting any type of trailer parked in a driveway or side yard. I've had some type of trailer, a pop-up, pull behind or fifth wheel in my driveway since 2001. My driveway was extended to meet those needs in 2011 by permit. Until this year, in 2016, you as a city council decided to enforce a parking restriction, which by most council members' own admission did not know the ordinance even existed. Now, as a knee-jerk reaction, the council wants to enforce the ordinance because it's there without taking the time to read or understand how many residents it adversely affects. I spoke with a representative from Jayco, a leading manufacturer of trailers, and he told me that after 36 feet in length, due to the total cost of the unit, most people become full-time RVers. So you could amend the current ordinance from 34 feet to 38 feet in length, which is a 32 square feet over the existing ordinance, a small walk-in closet. The height restriction is outdated because the camping industry now makes more campers with slide-outs due to the consumer demand making fewer campers under the current 9-foot restriction. Even campgrounds have begun addressing larger campers excuse me, by removing trees and making sites bigger to make the camping experience more enjoyable. I drove through the older section of the city that I believe the ordinance adversely affects because this part of town does not have homeowner association rules. I located 27 motorhomes, travel trailers, 30 boats, 7 pop-up trailers, and 13 utility trailers. Most of the smaller trailer owners that I spoke to did not understand that their driveway is considered front yard by the parking ordinance and is considered illegal to park in front of their garage, which was explained to me in person by Pam Hirth, head of zoning. A lot of the owners also made improvements to their lots to accommodate the trailer boats they own, just as I have. The people here tonight, with show of hands, and that I spoke with, feel that since no enforcement action had been taken in 25-plus years, you, as an elected city council, should write in a grandfather clause to this ordinance starting November 1st. If you can provide proof of ownership prior to this date, a permit could be issued by the police department at little or no cost. I believe council should not enforce the current ordinance because it would bring undue hardship locating a storage facility within a reasonable distance and the costly charges that go along with storing your trailer, be it big or small. Storage costs may have an impact on people's decision purchasing RV or boat if they knew in advance of this ordinance. If you choose not to amend the ordinance or grandfather current owners, I brought with me tonight a copy of Tinley Park's current ordinance, which could replace the ordinance we have now that Art Kuhn, a former alderman, stated came from Buffalo Grove. I hope the council looks at the amount of people that are here tonight and will change the current ordinance for the older sections of the city who do not live under homeowner association rules. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rona. Mr. Justice? Is Bob here?
It's really hard to hear in the back, plus the TV's not getting anything.
It's working again.
No audio
It was
on
down
TV.
a little bit, but it's back up.
Bob Justice, 724 Reef Road, Lockport. First, I'd like to say, you know, the new signs in town? Great. I love them. They're beautiful. I'd like to thank the alderpersons, those who have responded to my emails, and I know I've been a pest, okay? But I really thank you for responding. I thank those who stopped by my house. I really do appreciate that also. I'd like to thank the administrator, Ben Benson. He has been forthcoming with me back and forth with a few emails, kind of keeping me up to date, and I really do appreciate that also. I'd like to thank the chief, too. Chief, I sat and bent his ear for 45 minutes to an hour in his office, trying to make my point. So people have been very responsive, and I really do appreciate that. I'm just going to go over the same thing that I had before, the height and length. What Don said, new manufacturing, 9 foot is just, it's an unrealistic number. My neighbor's got a 6-foot fence. What's the difference, a 9-foot trailer or a 12-foot trailer? My shed and back can be up to 15, and I just put a new one up for my trailer. So really, I don't understand why 9 foot. Second thing is how the measurements are being made. I had the resource officer come out, do a preliminary thing on my trailer to see how I was doing. And I met almost everything except obviously the height. I was a little over that, and the length, because we keep using that appendentures, and it really is an outdated, even staff agreed that it was an outdated word and needs to be cleared up in the ordinance. Really needs to be eliminated, actually. Auxiliary parts, that's already written into that. And then storage cost. Storage costs, you know, you're going to drive us into storage costs. That's that much less money I have to spend here. Okay? Think about that. You're driving the money out of town. That's really all I have. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Mr. Johnson. Tom Pinn?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm Tom Penn. I live at 627 Jefferson in the old part of town right over there. I'm very happy one of the ladies left about the creek. I own a half a block of that creek. I want to give you a little background. I spent 18 years on the Zoning Board of Appeals, and it's not true that this has never been enforced, because we had those meetings, including Art Kuhn, who was in some of those meetings, because he was on the zoning board too. So they were enforced. We enforced boats. We enforced parking restrictions, whether in the front yard or in the parking. We enforced boats in front of the garages. We enforced motorhomes that weren't sitting on pads as required. All-weather pad, I believe, is what it's called. We did enforce those, so it isn't true. I'm sorry. Granted, there are a lot of people that come here and talk in front of the council. There's about between 80 and 100 affected individuals by this ordinance being enforced. That's 2% of the 5,000 homeowners in the city. The other 98% have a right also. We don't have to see you have a thing that blocks your neighbor's view. I remember in one of the other council meetings, someone said, well, my neighbors don't complain. That maybe is because they don't want to get into a fight with their next door neighbor. Do you ever think of that? For years, I had a camper next door to me in the front yard. I never said anything for that very reason. I don't want to get into an argument with my next door neighbor. I have antique cars. I store them. Luckily, it worked out that I can store them on my property. But there are a lot of people in town who have antique cars who don't store them correctly on their property. And the city has been enforcing those ordinances to go after those people also. One of the things about everybody that's been talking has been saying, well, we've got this big investment. And granted, they are big investments. But maybe, just maybe, you ought to figure out where you can keep it that's safer than sitting in your side yard or in your backyard. Things get broken into around here, in case you've never noticed. If you're not available to, or not, excuse me, not aware of the ordinance, maybe you need to be doing some research when you buy it. When you bought your house, you asked what the taxes were, right? When you bought your RV, did you ask, gee, do you know what the ordinance is in Lockport? They might be going to tell you, there may be not, but you could at least ask. The ordinances are available online. If you can't find it online, the building department will tell you what they are, and then you wouldn't have this issue. If you go and ride through places like Naperville and Wheaton, whether it's the old section of town or the new section of town, you don't see RVs sitting in people's front yard. I know I lived in Naperville for 10 years, so you can see it if you just drive through. Good friend of mine lives in Wheaton in a cul-de-sac in a very expensive house. He has a, I think, 36-footer. It looks to me like it's 2 stories tall, but I don't think it is. But he is only allowed to bring that, to work on it, to pack it up for a trip. He cannot store it there more than about a week at a time. The rest of the time, he puts it someplace where he pays rent. I know paying rent isn't any fun, but that's what you got to do. If you've got that investment, you put it someplace where it's secure. And again, this isn't anything new, folks. It's been going on. I've been on the zoning board from 1991. The ordinance came in 98. I don't remember if Art Kuhn was on the council then or not. He may very well have been. However, I think that the majority of people, 98%, don't have these issues. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Steve Scholl.
The little button on the side.
My name is Steve Scholl. I live at 321 South State. I've been there since 1985, and I've had some type of a RV, trailer, camper, boat since then. And I feel very secure having it parked in my driveway, not in some storage facility where I can't keep an eye on it. And a lot of these new ones, you have to keep them plugged into electricity, which you can't get at a storage facility. So that's why I like to keep it at my place. And if this ordinance came in 1998, they never notified anybody that had them parked in their driveways, or I never got one. That's about all I got to say.
All right, thank you, Steve. Brian, and forgive me, I can't make out your last name on the card.
Sorry?
I couldn't read your last name, Brian, I'm sorry. Belanda, please.
Ryan Belanda, 901 Glenmore, Lockport, Abbey Glen subdivision. You had mentioned about the ordinance has been enforced. I've been there since 2006. I moved in, I'm sorry, 2005. I moved in, I permitted for an extended driveway for my RV. The permit was approved, the driveway was installed. $7,000 for this driveway to put my RV there. It is not in front of the house, it's behind the front line of the house, out of sight. But I have never been enforced until now for, to not park it there. So my wife and I have a major investment for the driveway for it. Like some of the other people are saying, we feel more secure with it at our home than off-site. We do keep it plugged in for purposes. So,
Brian, when you submitted for the permit to do the driveway, what was the primary reason you did that?
park the RV there. We had it before we moved to Lockport, the RV.
Okay. So you knew there was an RV and you felt like it needed to be parked on the side? Why not just park it on the driveway as it was?
My driveway's not, I would be blocking the sidewalk. I felt that that was inappropriate.
Okay.
So the reason we bought this house was because there was enough side yard for the RV to fit. I'm on a corner lot, so my RV is between my house and my neighbor's house. My neighbor's here tonight as well. That's why we bought it and had the driveway installed for it. And there's never been, nothing was brought up about the ordinance in 2006 when I permitted for it. I wish I had the paperwork for the permit for it, that it would have said on there probably what the purpose was.
Well, that was actually my question. You just put in for a driveway, not for a driveway for an RV per se.
It was the intention of it. I'm sure that when they came out to do the inspections, it would have been mentioned. I can't say 100% sure that it was on the permit or the application, that I had RV on it.
We could pull that. What was your address again, if you don't mind?
I'm sorry?
901 Glenmore.
On the driveway permits, there's no section on there that says purpose. It's called a driveway permit. We just assume it's a driveway. There's no, because this came up when we met with the residents at the mayor's office, and I pulled a permit on one of them. And there is no reference on the application that says what the purpose of the driveway or driveway extension is.
So we would most likely just approve a driveway extension, just
Correct.
because they want a driveway?
If it met code, yes.
Okay. Anything else, Brian?
No.
All right. Thank you. Jane, you had something? Pisaglia?
I just have a question. This was all really interesting, so I got most of my questions answered. I've only lived in Lockport for 7 years, but I do believe that the needs of the greater community, the attractiveness of the house, the safety, the visibility for traffic, I really think that trumps the needs of somebody who bought a big giant RV and wants to park it in their driveway. Having said that, we have a little boat. It's not 35 feet long or anything, but we did the right thing. We asked about the codes when we moved here 7 years ago. The code officer came out, and we have we're sort of in a gray area, and he said, okay, yeah, it's on cement, and it's next to your house, kind of, and he said, you're conforming to the sense of the law, maybe not the letter. You're not impeding any visibility, there's no safety issues, neighbors aren't upset, but as someone said, maybe the neighbors are upset and they're not saying. I only have a question, because these were all really interesting points. Will there be any format? I mean, we don't have 1 million people in Lockport. Will there be a format for somebody to say, hey, can I present my individual case here, or, get a variance or something? We put a building on a piece of property in another community, and there were some lot line issues because of situations beyond our control, and we were able to get a variance. What is the format for saying, here's my individual case, and if this doesn't work for you, okay, I tried. But will there be one?
Sure. I mean, I think that exists now.
No, the variances that are heard before the Plan and Zoning Commission, there's only specific ones that can be heard, such as bulk regulations relating to setbacks, lot coverage. There's possibly some signage issues as well, but they're limited by ordinance and I think statute too, right, Tom? On what they can and can't hear.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I believe, and I'm sorry I didn't catch your name, but I believe you're asking, will you have an opportunity to be heard before action is taken to require the removal of either an RV or a trailer or a boat that may not be in compliance?
Right.
There will be an opportunity to meet with the administrative staff prior to any action being taken. If someone is not in compliance, citation will be issued. There will be an opportunity to be heard at that point. But it's not really a variance process where we could make an exception. That meeting would be an opportunity for you to tell us how we may be making a mistake in the interpretation of the ordinance or in measurement or whatever factual basis that we have for believing that you may be in violation. So that would be the opportunity to be heard.
After I get a ticket for it or something?
There would be a notice,
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
And again, and I think we need to make this clear, while there could be monetary penalties attached to this, it's not the intent of the staff, nor do I believe it's the intent of the city council to use this as a revenue opportunity, nor to punish people through the fine process. I think what we want to do is make sure we give everyone an adequate opportunity to be heard. If we are mistaken in the way we've assessed your particular RV or trailer or boat, then there's an opportunity for us to correct our mistake. If there isn't, then there would be a compliance date issued, and by then we would expect compliance. If there's still non-compliance at that point, then we would have to take some sort of action to require you to move whatever may be outside of what's permitted by the ordinance.
Okay. Okay, thanks. And I was supposed to say, I'm Jane Pasalia, 1201 Illini.
Okay.
Thank you, Gene.
Thanks for your answer.
Just a point of clarification, as we have discussed this prior, we were going to be enforcing this in September. We've given additional time to November. Currently, as of November 1st, staff would be going out, looking for these compliance issues. They will issue basically a 10-day notice to comply. If compliance is not met, then a citation for enforcement would be issued, to gain compliance. And we will be trying to put it on the website and Facebook and have it out there, broadcasted as much information as we can. I think some of the RV petitioners have done a good job of even communicating with each other. So I think there's a fairly good buzz about what this is about and how it's occurring. So we're hoping that we can garner compliance in a reasonable time frame and without having to issue tickets.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to comment, because I disagree with what City Administrator, the spirit of what he just said. This all goes away if we go ahead and we look at the actual ordinance, at the bottom of all the ordinances, you're going to see, an inch worth of amended on such and such a dates. As I stated a couple of months ago, this was an arbitrary thing that was approved by the city council back whenever they took on they purchased the ordinance from the other town. And this goes away, and 98% of the people in this room are now compliant by going from 34 to 36 feet, and from 9 feet to 12 feet. And to put it in perspective, if we just go ahead and look at, well, that's an additional 3 feet high by 36 feet, so that's 108 feet. And we take the 2 feet by 9 feet, by 12 feet, that's 24. And so what we come up with is 128 or so additional square feet. That's what we're talking about here. 128 additional square feet. And for the life of me, I have no idea. So now not everybody in this room, nor everybody who owns a camper in town has a 36-foot by 12-foot high camper. And I'd say, for argument purposes, maybe 20. So if we take the total square feet, the total square feet is less than half of the square footage of this floor that we're on throughout the entire 25 square miles of the city of Lockport. The solution to this is to go ahead and amend our city ordinance by allowing 36 feet in length, 12 feet in height, the measurements from the front of the box to the back of the box, the top of the box to the ground. As long as that camper is parked on the side yard or in the backyard on an approved surface, which would be concrete, asphalt, concrete or asphalt, and in many cases in the past we've allowed gravel. Then what we're going to have here is 98% of the people have RVs or will be compliant. And that's the solution. So I would like to have, and I sent the city administrator last week a text amendment language. I'm sorry, those that park their boats and their trailers and their RVs in their driveways, well, I don't believe that it would be, personally, I don't believe that's considered the front yard. It's called a compromise, folks. It's going to be 98% of the people that may be affected by this ordinance will be compliant, or a greater majority will not be. Also, there seems to be a disconnect of some people that they actually believe that enforcement of this is going to make these campers go away. Well, if you own a 16-foot camper like I do, that's 9 feet high like mine, and I park it on the side of my house, which I don't because I have cottonwood trees and they drop their branches all the time, then I'll be compliant. And so will probably 99.5% of the boats here in town. I don't think I've ever seen a 36-foot long by 12-foot high or greater boat parked in a driveway or along the side of a house. Utility trailers, we have contractors, and that's where they park their trailers, is along the side of their house. They're not 34 feet. They're not greater than 9 feet high. And so the thought that these things are going to go away, they're not. we're talking 20, 25, maybe 30, 30 campers and RVs with a grand total square footage of, I don't know, 8,000 square feet. And it's hard for me to believe that 8,000 square feet of additional camper by amending the ordinance is going to go ahead and cause anybody here in town any grief whatsoever. And so I would like to have this on the agenda. I will not be at the next council meeting, and so I would like to have it on the agenda for the second meeting for the Committee of the Whole, an ordinance for the Committee of the Whole on the second meeting in October, so we can vote on this in November. I believe we need to do the right thing, amend this. 2 additional feet in length, 3 additional feet in height, and we're done with it.
Well, I think to Darren's point about that this doesn't make trailers go away, I think you're correct, and I don't think anyone is trying to do that. I think Lockport has actually already a decent compromise. No one's trying to get rid of everybody's boat. No one's trying to get rid of everyone's trailer. I think the council, when they adopted this in 1998, I think it's kind of a false way of presenting it, that it was arbitrary. They did it for a reason. And then it's been debated, as Mr. Pinn pointed out, a number of times throughout the years and amended. So this is no longer just an arbitrary ordinance. This is something that's been debated by a number of councils. And as this has come up, I have asked former mayors and other councilmen who sat up here their opinions on this, and as they told me as well, this is not new, Steve. This comes up all the time. So it is a false argument to say that this has just never been debated before. I think at 9 foot by 34 foot, we already have a good compromise. I believe that with a 48-hour parking time on either side of a trip is already a good compromise. It's not the strictest, it's not the loosest in the region, but it's certainly something that we are not looking to get rid of everybody's boat. We're just looking to make sure that if someone's looking outside of their kitchen window, they don't have to look in, as if it's in a trailer park. Their desire is to live in a neighborhood, and these things are about protecting the integrity of a neighborhood. I disagree with that. This is just an extra 120 square foot. It's about looking at, a large vehicle. I also don't believe, after having, talked through this with the citizens that came out and having, considered this, that 9 foot is something that's outdated. I believe 9 foot was specifically put in there to discourage large RVs. While we're not trying to discourage all vehicles, we are trying to discourage the largest ones that I think break the integrity of the neighborhood. I think grandfathering, as it was brought up earlier, I think is also not the right move. I think there are some folks who've either willfully ignored this, and to reward them by grandfathering them I don't think is appropriate. And for those who are ignorant of it, I think sometimes when the gentleman bought his home, I think RV ordinances are very common. Everybody who owns an RV knows that parking it is always a point of contention in any community. To not go ahead and look at what the ordinances are locally before you purchase an RV or buy a house specifically to park your RV just seems a little baffling to me. I believe 9 by 34 is a good compromise as is. Again, I'd like to take a straw poll. Are we leaving this as is, or do we move forward and put it on an agenda item like
If I may make just a point of order, I'm not sure if Darren made a motion or not.
There's no motion to make.
There's no motion because there's nothing on the agenda. But you have to go to planning.
I can have anything on the agenda.
Okay, well, you can't just you can't make a zoning change just to council. You have to go to zoning first. So you'd have to go back to planning and zoning, then to committee of the whole for a text amendment, and then to city council. So you'd have a minimum 3 meetings.
I guess at the moment, what I'd just like to do is take a straw poll. Are we going to leave this as is, or are we going to amend? I think all in favor of leaving the ordinance as is. I'd like to hear ayes.
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays besides Darren?
Well, I like to say, I would like to see it debated further, but generally, I'm more on the side of keeping it as is, but I have a little bit of a different take, and I expressed this before, is let's not count the air conditioning unit on top and also not counting the hitch in front. So just measure the box. That's kind of like my take on it.
And I actually thought about that too. I actually brought that up when it was debated here last time. But again, as I researched this further, that amendment was added in 2008. Again, another council before us has already had that debate. It was public, and they decided to clear things up for our ordinance officers. And so they put the language in there specifically. So I think yo-yoing these ordinances around every time, folks are, feel like there's an issue with it, I think is disingenuous. And I think it's also problematic for our code enforcement officers. And just another thing I'd like to point out is, I think Mr. Pinn makes a good point. Sometimes we just, neighbors, they don't like to have confrontation with their neighbors. That's why we take the heat for it. And also, I don't believe that the code enforcement officer should be taking heat for it too. When people are, issued citations, I like to point out that they're under our direction, and that I appreciate if no hostility is taken out towards officers when they're doing their job. The heat is ours. If this council chooses to, and it sounds like besides maybe Bob and Darren, that we're going to keep the ordinance as is, that, we're the ones that, do the hard work that neighbors don't have to do when they're upset about these things. So it sounds like besides the two, we're in favor of keeping the ordinance as is.
I'm with Bob Peretta. I think it's still talkable, but there's only the three of us that are going in that direction. I mean, it wasn't until recently that I finally started hearing what was so-called the silent majority, which is all the people who don't want RVs at all. I mean, you start hearing about vote it as it is, which is the 9 foot by 34, change it to the 12 foot by 36, or you have other people calling and saying, well, I don't want them at all. Can you do anything about getting rid of them? So it's hard to just come out and say, okay, who do we make happy? I mean, so I think there is negotiation. There's some still talking points that can be done, but I mean, you can see that it's 5-on-3, so I don't know how long we can talk and what's going to get accomplished.
Yeah, I mean, I really feel like we've talked about this quite enough. And again, I believe that 9 by 34 with 48-hour windows on either side of, a trip has been the compromise.
Yeah, I think the issue with the pertinence language in the ordinance is, if you say we're just going to measure the box, then how big of an appurtenance do you allow? I mean, how big can that go? Then you're adding another dimension to this that can really take on a whole life of its own. I think the ordinance, the way it's written is clear. It's, it's how tall it is. You measure from the top to the bottom. And I don't think there can be any confusion that way.
I'll add a little bit to that too. First of all, I'd like to thank the people for coming out and showing your compassion and how much you really care about your activities that you do out of work. I think that's awesome. What I'd like to share too is a little bit about my family. They do own campers, and we own RTVs, or ATVs, I'm sorry, ATVs. One of the things that seem to be common that I've kind of learned to understand is that the bigger the better. A couple years they're going to get bigger. That's my understanding of recreational activities and vehicles. I did go see Bob Joss's camper. Awesome, Bob. You do a nice job over there. Very well maintained. So I want to say thank you for that. We already do have some restrictions. Again, 9 foot high, 34 long. We do allow campers. So I think that says something right there. There are communities that say, hey, you can't have any. Aren't we compromising a little bit here? I know we can't please everybody as an alderman. I don't think we can please everybody. Believe me, run for the seat. But I think we try, and I think we try damn hard. Because we want people to be happy in their homes, and we want the community to do good. I think this is part of what we think is good, to allow some. Again, we talked about the box sizes, 12 foot, 36. Some of those are confusing for me, and I'll explain. Those numbers are confusing for me because right now they're good. Are they going to be good next year? The year after that? The year after that? Do we bring this back in 5 years and totally look at it again because the next camper got a little bit bigger than this one did? Those are my thoughts. We also talked about the height of like, say, 12 foot. If my numbers are right here that I wrote down, I think the law is 13.1. Okay? We talked about the size of 12 foot or 12 foot the box. And as I said to Mr. Justice when I was there, it's a little confusing because at 12 foot, we make it 12 foot, but yet when we travel with that trailer, I don't think the 12 foot is actually our number we're looking at, because if we go under viaducts, we actually want the true height of our equipment. I know because I do drive a big truck that we do go under viaducts. So again, I'm okay with what we have now. I know it's not pleasing everybody, but I think we need to take a stand.
All right. If there's nothing else, then we will enforce the ordinance beginning November 1st, as we had previously discussed. If there's nothing else, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Alderman Petracca, seconded by Alderman Deskin. All in favor? Aye. All right, why don't we take 5?
Mayor, can I ask one question? Is the fine is going to be $100 every 7 days, is that correct?
I actually don't know what the fine is. It's not my intention to collect any fines. I don't want to make any.
I'm not accusing you of this, but I'm told that the fine is going to be $100 every 7 days. And if you're going to file for a variance, it's $600.
Why is this continuing?
Just to let the people know that.
I don't know. Got bigger things to talk about.
Thank you, Mayor.
Actually,
got too close, so we're going to start city council. Yes. Yeah, the
Isn't that funny that
I've been backed off. She yells at me back there.
Not really, yeah.
We had 88 approximately come through. 1 year we had,
You won't hear me no more, huh?
since we got little cul-de-sac, everyone
All right, looks like everybody's here. Alice, can I have a roll call for city council meeting?
Alderman Petracos?
Here.
Alderman Capadona?
Here.
Alderman Delogley?
Here.
Alderman Smith?
Here.
Alderman Deskin?
Here.
Alderman Vandermeer?
Here.
Alderman Perretta?
Here.
Alderwoman Bartleson?
Here.
8 present.
Okay. Pastor Lou, if you could take a moment. I'm sorry I missed you, committee of the whole, but please, if you could open us in prayer.
It's never too late, right?
That's right.
Almighty God, we thank you for your great freedoms that you give us in our country. We thank you for your presence in our life, the strength and the blessings you give us. We ask you to protect our schools and keep our children safe on our streets. We ask you to keep our first responders safe. And Father, I thank you for these councilmen and this mayor, and Father, this staff, and Father, the city staff that works the streets and maintains things, and Father, all the things that go on in this city. We thank you for them. We ask you to bless the staff and the workers, and for these councilmen and this mayor, we ask you to give them great wisdom. We ask you to flood this room with your peace. And Father, we ask you to bless their families richly. We thank you for everything you've given us, and we pray in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Lou. Okay, so looking for a motion to have a consent agenda today.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we have the regular city council meeting minutes from September 7th, committee of the whole meeting minutes from September 7th. We have our payroll period ending September 11th, approval of various bills. We have our special city council meeting minutes from August 30th, Lockport 4th of July fireworks contract. There's the travel and reimbursement policy resolution. We have our intergovernmental agreement between the City of Lockport and the Will County 911 Emergency Telephone System Board. And lastly, we have approval of Lockport Emergency Plan. So again, I'm looking to have a motion to pass the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Alderman Petracas, seconded by Alderman Galogly. Can I have a roll call, please?
Bartleson? Yes. Perretta?
Yes.
Vandermeer?
Yes.
Deskin?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Delogley?
Yes.
Capadona?
Yes.
Petracos?
Yes.
7 yeas, motion carried.
All right. Who's doing AT1?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'll handle that one. We're actually asking you to hold this one over until the October 5th meeting. This is a recapture agreement for the Panatone project, the Lockport 355 project. There are 4 industrial properties that are close to Panatone that will be benefiting from the public improvements that Panatone has installed as part of its development. The recapture agreement was included as part of the annexation agreement that was approved in the early part of 2015, and we are now bringing this back to you for final approval because we have final numbers as to what the public improvements cost, and we take that and apportion the cost among the other 4 property owners for their respective shares. Panatone is still paying for the primary cost of the project, but the others, when they do come in for a building permit or for some other plat approval, they'll be required to reimburse Panatone for those improvements at that point. The attorney for Panatone is reviewing the numbers right now. We believe that the numbers that have been reviewed by the engineers and approved by the engineers are accurate. He wanted just a little bit more time to review it with his client. So we'll be holding this one over until October 5th. The agreement is similar to the one that you saw, though, in 2015 as part of the amended annexation agreement.
Okay, do I need to make a motion to table this?
No, actually, we'll just put it on the next agenda.
Okay. All right, sounds good. Pam?
Yes, thank you. This item was discussed at the Committee of the Whole meeting on September 7th. At that time, staff had provided an overview of the requested actions. This is the Panattoni Development, Building 3 at 355 Corporate Center. The only outstanding item at the time I made this presentation was that the landscape plan needed to be revised in accordance with Planning and Zoning Commission condition. That has been done, so the landscape plan in your packet reflects that change. With that being said, staff is seeking a motion to approve ordinance number 16-012, which is the ordinance which would amend the special use permit, amend the preliminary plan, approve a final plan for Building 3 in the 355 Corporate Center, and the attorney representing ownership is present this evening if there's any further questions.
All right, everybody, let me make a motion. Can I make a motion to pass?
So moved.
Alderman Petrakis. Seconded by Alderman Vandermeer. Any questions, concerns? All right, then. Can I have why don't we just do a roll call?
Petrakos?
Yes.
Capadona?
Yes.
Gillogly?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Deskin?
Yes.
Vandermeer?
Yes.
Corrado?
Yes.
Bartleson?
Yes.
8 yeas, motion carried.
All right, very good. Anything else?
I have a question for Pam. This is in regards to the last Plan and Zoning Commission meeting where whoever the developer next to Panduit is. One of the questions that concerns that the Planning Commission had was about the drive on the eastern portion of the development line up with Sagebrook.
Yes.
Since I'm not going to be at the next meeting, I was just wondering have they addressed that? Are they addressing that?
Yes, they will be aligning it with the Sagebrook entrance into the subdivision.
Thank you.
All right, my friends, if there's nothing else, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Petrakis and Bartleson. All in favor? Aye.
What time are you getting up there?
Tomorrow, what's tomorrow?
Tomorrow's Thursday.
I know, what do we?